everybody will get in and take your seats. We'll get started. I want to welcome a lot of visitors. We got so many visitors, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Brooke, where are you? That's Brooke, yeah? We got the weather lady from WABT here. Brooke Laser's here. We got some stars in our midst. Thank y'all all for being here. And thank you, regular members, for being a part of this class. Isn't it great to study God's Word together? This is a wonderful, wonderful class and an idea that Graham had and Cody's bolstered, and it's just a wonderful time to be together and worship God and study His Word together. Before we begin today, Cody, would you open our class with a word of prayer?
Sure. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here in your house and to learn more about you together. God, I pray that you would bless the teaching of your Word through Bill, and that we would understand it more today so that we can live our lives in a way that glorifies and honors you. We know that's what this is about, God. We, again, thank you for all your many blessings. Thank you for this church, and I pray that you would bless us and help us to do your will, Father. Amen.
And let's see, where's Edward and Emily? There they are. We're excited to have Edward Green with us today. Dr. Green is a radiologist over at UMC, and he's going to encourage his residents to come study with us. So he's a real growth opportunity. So everybody get around and speak to Emily and Ed over there. We're in the middle of our family conference this week. I understand things are going really, really well with David Robbins. Have some of y'all been to this? But he's going to talk today, and I've heard great things about the conference, and we're excited about being a part of that. And as we begin our lesson today, I'm going to begin with the application of the lesson, which is kind of a turnaround of the way we usually do things. But we all either have children or grandchildren, or we babysit children, or we're around children. And one of the most delightful things about children is their questions, isn't it? And God did not put a filter on children's questions, did He? They ask anything. Pop, why is Tip so cute and you're not? You know, they're pretty brutally honest about things. Well, Tip's a dog and he's always been cute. Yeah. So we give them flippant answers, and then sometimes we give well thought out answers, and they continue to ask questions of increasing complexity until one day they know everything. You know, and then they stay that way for a while, and then when you're dead and gone, they say, you know, Pop used to say, and they kind of look back on things. But when they're little, they ask a lot of questions, and it's imperative that we as parents understand the Word of God. There's a lot of Scripture that tells us that's a very serious responsibility, the raising of children, and it, to me, is a tragedy that we're sending our children to schools in the Jackson, Mississippi area or anywhere where our children are being taught a false religion and a false science about a basic fundamental question: where did everything come from? Kids ask that question. And, you know, in our hearts of hearts, we ask that question. How did everything come to be, and how this came to an existence, and how does it work together so well? And we're going to look at that today in our Sunday school class. There's kind of a pseudoscience out there that's battling intelligent design by an amazing creator, God, and evolution. Our children should learn about that at home, from the Bible and from us. And as important as science is, it's hardly touched in the Bible. First 31 verses of the book of Genesis talks about the creation of the universe. There's a little bit about it in Isaiah. There's Job 38, 39, 40, 41. And then there's a few Psalms and a couple of Proverbs that talk about the creation and science. And the rest of the Bible is about the reason it's there: God's plan for the redemption of man. That's the important part. We need to really study and teach our children. But there's a lot of science in the Bible, and we're going to take a look at it. Evolution, in its final essence, comes from one experiment, the Stanley Miller experiment, or the Stanley Miller's boss experiment, where he heated a bunch of water and drove it up through a tube and combined it with a bunch of methane and ammonia and hydrogen and sparked it and condensed it. And down here he found some organic molecules and compounds that had been made from this, and he felt like this was the earliest atmosphere on the earth, and that's how life came to be from these compounds. And our liberal friends that teach in our universities and teach our children in schools believe that somehow from these basic organic compounds, things evolved into life itself. And God bless them. We believe that in the book of Job, Job's friends came to him after God was disciplining Job, and then finally God himself spoke to Job in a whirlwind in Job 38. And last week we looked at some amazing things God pointed out, scientific truths that would not be elucidated by mankind for 3,800 or more years later under Sir Francis Bacon's scientific method. And today we're going to look at even more as God speaks to Job out of the whirlwind and talks to him about his amazing, diverse universe. A universe created by intelligent design instead of one that just happened to evolve. One thing is absolutely certain. The Earth is a tiny speck of the cosmos. This is a photograph, one of my favorites from Voyager 2. It is 4 billion miles away, and they ask it to turn around and photograph the Earth from which it came. And there we are, suspended in a sunbeam, the planet Earth. And all the life that ever lived on it, and all the life that is on it, and all these things is on that one little planet. God sure went to a whole lot of trouble to create a universe and create life and create mankind to love us so, didn't he? It kind of puts it in perspective. The psalmist said, "What is man that thou art mindful of him? And the son of man that thou visited him? How excellent is thy name in all the earth." Did God really do that? Did he do all these things and create the universe and all just for mankind? Did he love us that much that he created us and has a plan for our redemption? It's a fantastic idea, isn't it? Amazingly complex. When we look at nature around us, these are 2 owls in our backyard that my wife loves and photographs a lot. Look at the second owl. See him there? What about the camouflage? Is that just an accident? Is that a random event? Did that just evolve? His keen eyesight that can see prey far, far away, his hearing, his ears are designed, he's got these little cones, and an owl always looks at you this way so that the sound from you or from whatever his object of regard is hits his ears at 2 different instants, and he can triangularize a fix from that sound. Is that an accident? That just happens to be. His beak is strong enough to break bones, and everything on that owl is covered with feathers. His leading wing, on his wing, is covered with feathers, making his flight absolutely silent. So when he makes his approach, there's no sound at all. All these things about just an owl. He has no sense of smell. What's their favorite food? Skunks. Yeah, that's how I really knew we had owls in our yard, because I started smelling skunk every day when I go out to work and get in my truck. I smell something's killing all our skunks. And it turned out it was these owls that moved in. They take a nest that they didn't build. That owls don't build their own nest. They raid a nest that was used last year by a hawk or a squirrel or something, and they kind of re-engineer it to make it do. That's how owls do. How do they know to do that? Why do they do that? You can see 2 little heads. This is the first day that we know of that they could peek over the edge of the nest and see Leslie and her camera. And they have face recognition technology in their little brains, and they could know Leslie and not other people. They'd jump back in if somebody else came on, the neighbor's kids came in, but they would look at Leslie and let her approach quite closely. Well, I guess we're not going to get to look at it, but
It was playing. It play on your machine for your iPad.
what do we do, just wait?
Did you hit play on your iPad? Did it on the iPad again at work?
On the iPad?
Now it's working, it's good.
Well,
Next one.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Corinne. Let's just call her Owl down. It knows the sound of her voice. It sees we have a cell phone. It's not sure about the cell phone. Looks over at Leslie. It has lost its fear of us. She's talking to it. Okay. He's looking. How does he know to do all this? Isn't that amazing? Isn't nature just amazing? And it's time for him to have a little conversation with his mama. There they are talking. Just tell him what to look at, what she sees. And after a while, he's had enough. And it's time to watch her from afar. But in nature, who determines the gestation of each animal or when animals are born? Who teaches the young animals to hide out and stay away from predators and crouch in their dens? Who makes a war horse fearless, an animal that will charge into men holding swords and spears, and yet is afraid of a grasshopper? Who gives the eagle his sight? Who allows some animals to be domesticated and some not to be domesticated? Can this all be random events? I don't think so. Let's see what Job has to say, or what God has to say about it in the book of Job, and we'll pick it up down here in verse 39 of chapter 38. Will thou hunt the prey for the lion, or fill the appetite of the young lions? The young lions aren't worried about mama lion finding enough to eat. They were born at the perfect time during the migration that mama lions got plenty to eat. When they crouch in their dens and abide in the covert or hidden places and lie in wait, who told them to hide and be covert? Who provideth the raven his food when the young ones cry unto God? They wonder for lack of meat. Knowest now the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth, or cast their mark when the hinds do calve? Canst thou number the months that they fulfill their gestational period? Or knowest thou the time when they bring forth? They bow themselves, they bring forth their young ones, they cast out their sorrows, the young ones are in good liking, and they grow up with corn, and they go forth, and they do not return to them. Who has set the wild ass free? You can't domesticate a wild ass. And who's loosed the bonds of the wild ass? Whose house I made in the wilderness, in the barren land, in the dwellings. He scummeth the multitude of the city, neither regardeth he the crying of the driver. You cannot domesticate him. The range of mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. And the unicorn, what's a unicorn? A rhinoceros. Ancient word for rhinoceros. The rhinoceros, would he be willing to serve thee? You can't domesticate a rhinoceros. Or abide by thy crib, would he live with you? No. Canst thou bind the unicorn or rhinoceros with the band of the furrow, or will he harrow the valleys after thee? Will thou trust him, because his strength is great? Or wilt thou leave thy labor to him? Absolutely not. Gavest the goodly things wings to peacocks, or wings and the feathers of an ostrich? An ostrich has no maternal instincts. They just lay their eggs, throw a bunch of sand on them, and leave. Which leaveth her eggs in the earth and warmeth them in the dust. You think Job ever saw an ostrich? Where do ostriches live? Hundreds of miles from where Job was. And forgetteth at the foot they crush them, or the wild beasts may break them. She is hardened against her young ones as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain and without fear, because God has deprived her of wisdom, neither hath he imparted to her understanding. Which time she lifted up herself on high, she scummeth the horse and his rider. Hast thou given the horse strength? Hast thou clothed his neck with thunder? Canst thou make him afraid of a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He paweth in the valley and rejoiceth in his strength. He goes on to meet armed men. He mocketh at fear and is not afraid at all. Neither turneth his back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the glittering spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with the fierceness of rage. Neither believe he that the sound of the trumpet. And we'll take it up at number 25. He saith the trumpets, he, ha, ha, and he smelleth the battle after the thunder of the captains and the shouting. Horses are unafraid, yet they're afraid of a grasshopper. Who put that in them? Does the eagle mount up without command and make her nest on high? She dwelleth and abideth in the rock, upon the crag of the rock and the strong place. From thence she seeketh the prey, and her eyes behold afar off. Her young ones also suck up the blood where the slain are and where she is. She brings them their food. Amazing commentary on these ecosystems. Now, Paul and Jean and I are old enough to remember when there was no such thing as an ecosystem. Ecology is a fairly new science, and we learn it in second grade now. We learn in a pond the sun shines and makes the plankton grow, and the small fish eat it, and then the primary consumers of the small fish, the brim, are eaten then by the turtle, and his droppings refuel the thing. So we got an ecosystem going in a pond, and there's all kinds of ecosystems described in Job. The birds, the ravens have one, the lions have one, on and on and on with these ecosystems already described in Job and discovered in the 1970s by John T. Flynn, who invented the Flynn Index, which is a mathematical expression of the stability of ecosystems. Again, a case where man is catching up to the science in Job. Are we a product of evolution or intelligent design? It's interesting that a number of people have observed this who are case-hardened atheists. Among them, a guy named Steven Weinberg, Nobel Prize laureate, who's head of the science department of the University of Texas. He wrote a fascinating book I encourage you all to read called The First 3 Minutes, talking about the creation of the universe. And he says how surprising is it that the laws of nature and the initial conditions of the universe should allow for the existence of beings who could observe it. Life as we know it would be impossible if any one of several physical quantities had slightly different values. When we talk to our children as they grow and go to school and learn more and more about the laws of science, we learn that our universe is incredibly finely tuned for life. And it was finely tuned from the moments after creation. When matter first formed out of energy, there were 4 forces. And what were they? Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. Had any of them been a little bit different, just a millionth different, then there would be no molecules, there would be no atoms, and there would be no universe, and there would be no life. Had gravity been just a little stronger, when matter began to form, there would have been a collapse of the universe, no life. Our universe is extremely finely tuned, and you can study the probability of each one of these happening because that is known, and there are too many things that had to line up exactly right in sequence, in order, for life to be conceived and to work. Another thing is the serial probability of this. It's an absurdity to think that all these things could happen exactly as they did and life to occur as an accident, and that we're here by evolution and we're just all some cosmic accident. Another thing we need to teach our children is about irreducible complexity. If you have a cell, what are the components of a cell? Every one of you know, you learned in the 3rd grade. Nucleus?
Membrane.
Yep, cell membrane. Cytoplasm. Mitochondria. Golgi apparatus. That's 5 things. So if you're missing one of those things, do you have like a 20% less efficient cell or dead cell? You got a dead cell. So how did the first cell arise? From all that stuff in the Stanley Miller experiment, from just a few organic. That's a pretty big stretch, isn't it? So, and the thing that works also against the idea of evolution is the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Things tend to become more disorganized with the passage of time instead of more organized. As we study this, I love the book of Job because it's science. The book of Job and the book of Genesis are so true, and the brief touch that the Bible gives to science is so accurate and so prescient. But if you want to read 3 books about it, I love these 3. The Signature in the Cell by Stephen Meyer is an amazing book. He started off an atheist, and by studying the biology of the cell became a Christian. And he's written a series of books, but this one is my favorite, The Signature in the Cell. If you read that book, you'll have a really good idea about how improbable it is that our universe arose by anything less than intelligent design. Wonderful life. Wouldn't it be great if there was a place where the Cambrian age, where all life was created 240 million years ago, were preserved somehow? And we could go back and study the fossilized remnants of the first life on Earth. Well, that place is there, and it's near Banff, Canada. And it's called the Burgess Shale. A guy named Walcott, who ran the Smithsonian Institution for many years, discovered that, and a guy named Stephen Jay Gould, wrote a book called Wonderful Life, and you can study about it yourself. Evolution didn't occur as your children are going to be taught, that it starts off with little molecules, and they evolve into viruses, and they evolve into cells, and then multicells, and finally very complex organisms. It didn't happen that way at all. In only 20 million years, which is a cosmic snap of a finger, all life, all 34 phyla were created, and actually a lot more that are not around today, and their fossil remains are there. They couldn't survive the environment of the early Earth and the present Earth, so they're no longer with us. So God created more kinds of animals than there needed to be, and then I agree with survival of the fittest. I think Darwin was right about that, but what we see around us is the product of a whole lot of life that was created on Earth, and it's been winnowed down to the ones who survived. And you can read about it in this book, Wonderful Life. And then this is Steven Weinberg's book, The First 3 Minutes, about the creation of the universe. You can't read that book and not wonder how anyone could believe that the universe occurred as a cosmic accident. It had to be designed. There's too much evidence of intelligent design. But we have the evidence of ourselves in our Holy Scriptures, the book of Genesis, the book of Job, some Proverbs, some Psalms, and of course the book of Isaiah. So, we got children raised, we got children to influence, we got friends with children, and children ask us a lot of questions about how life arose and how things came to be. And I know that this is way too much to talk about in one Sunday school lesson, but I hope it stimulated you to pick up some of these books and study about it, so that when the children start asking the questions, you'll be ready. Any questions or comments? Next week, Graham's going to talk to us. I'm not sure what he's going to talk about. I look forward to that. And we are going to start a new class project. David Bunger is a guy who does video stuff for our church, and he is going to record snippets, especially we're going to kind of start with our students. And Seth, we're going to ask you, I've talked to some others, that we'll do the first series. These will be under a minute, just what you like about our class, why you like it, where we meet, what time. And we can hit share on social media and spread the word to come to our class.
Will you go back to the book names?
Signature in the Cell, that's by Stephen Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R. And Wonderful Life by Gould, G-O-U-L-D. And The First 3 Minutes by Steven Weinberg.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I don't really want to put you on the spot, but do you have any defining or your most memorable question that one of your children or grandchildren asked you?
Yeah, you know, when my little girl Emily was little, she said, "Daddy, how can all this be? How can all this be? There's so many things out there, and it all seems to work together." And yeah, kids got me to think. At that point, I didn't have a good answer for it, and then we gave the old off-the-shelf answer that we all give our children and our parents gave us. God made it. And that's the correct answer. It's absolutely the correct answer. But backing it up and filling it in with fact has been a lot of fun. I'm an old man, but a young Bible scholar. It's a good question.
I'll say this, when our son Daniel was in school, he was in a class, I think he was in junior high, and they were discussing some of this, and he wanted to defend the Bible, and he really didn't know enough, and he stood up and he said that's what inspired him to start learning, because children were laughing at him when the teacher said, okay, would you stand up and start telling your part, and he really couldn't. And he said that's what started him really, really learning and wanting to be able to defend his faith and defend what we believe. So your children will be challenged regardless of if they're in a private school, public, definitely in college.
Absolutely. And
They need to be able to defend this. And you need to be able to teach them as parents how to defend it.
right. And we as Christians are commanded by 1 Peter 3:16 to prepare a defense for what we believe. But I do remember one night, it was a rainy night, and my son and I were on a bike trip in Europe, and this lady who taught at the London School of Economics said, you're from the USA, right? You're from the southern United States? Yeah. Are you a Christian? Yes. Are you a Baptist? Yes. So you believe all that stuff? Yes. I don't see how you can believe all this. It's just a bunch of old stories that never happened and all that kind of stuff. And I said, tell you what, lady, I'm going to buy you a bottle of wine. I'm going to give you an hour to convince me to be an atheist, and you give me an hour to convince you to be a Christian and a believer, and we're not going to interrupt each other. If you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it in under a minute. Same thing with you. Game on? And so we had a lot of fun. I think as Christians we ought to be able to do that. And Job and the book of Genesis gives us plenty of ammunition. And the more we study it from these books and peer-reviewed science, frankly, the better off we are to defend our faith. The Bible is true. If it's true about the science, it's got the rest of it right too. All right. We'll see y'all next week. And tell you what, Seth, would you dismiss us?
Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for letting us come to your house and just learn a little bit more about you today. Thank you just for putting reminders all over nature that you are who you say you are. Lord, I pray that you get us together this week and bring us back safely next week. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen.